Hi, from slidenerd, this is Vibs over here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the advanced grid layout. Now you guys have been introduced to the basic grid layout in my last video where I talked about how to arrange your views inside rows and columns. Now for those of you who are completely new to this, well, grid layout is a layout that arranges stuff inside rows and columns. It was introduced in Android version I think 14, which is your ice cream sandwich. Now let's go and see how this thing works. What are the different things we can do with a grid layout? First question people have inside the grid layout is, hey, can I change the size of the views inside? Can I make something look bigger, smaller, something like that? Well, yes you can. To a limited extent, you can use this Android layout gravity attribute to ensure that your views can take more space or less space depending on how things work. Now remember, this second point is very important. The size of a view is dependent not only on its layout gravity but also the neighbor cells. Now what does this mean? I'm going to show you an example of what this means, but for now, bookmark this point inside your head. Alright, so here what I have is I have a simple structure with different columns and rows, as you guys can see. R0, column 0, column 1, column 2, and then I have the second row, which is your row 1 and column 0, row 1 and column 1, right? So for the layout, things look like this. Very simple. I have the grid layout over here and I have nothing but all the text views just placed inside. Now notice there is no row, table row, nothing, right? I have just simply placed stuff and Android is doing everything, arranging stuff automatically for me, and has also specified that the row count should be 2 and the column count should be 3. That means there are 2 rows and 3 columns, just like the way we have over here. Now if you guys notice, take a look for the third text view over here. If I use this attribute Android layout gravity equals to fill horizontal, what is going to happen? Well, very simple. This third text view R0 column 2 is going to go ahead and take up all the available space on the screen, and this is how you can change the width of your element inside your grid layout using this layout gravity. You can do the same thing with the height, but remember there is some second point which I mentioned. I told you guys to bookmark that. Remember how things depend on neighboring columns. Let's go and see an example of that now. Same structure over here, R0 column 0, blah blah blah, right? Now what I want to do is I want to stretch this R0 column 0 to take up all the available width, and these two should go to the corner, something like that. So how can I do that? Well, you guys will say that, hey, very simple, use Android layout gravity equals to fill horizontal on that column. But look what happens. Nothing happens at all. It's just the same way as it is before. Now why the hell? Now this is where the second point comes into picture. Now you see, this column is not alone. There's another column, R1 column 0, right below it, right? So if you apply some changes to this column, you're also supposed to apply the same changes to this column as well, and that is how things take effect, and that is why the size of a column is also dependent on its neighboring view. So let me actually show you an image of what I mean over here. So here, the same thing, I want to stretch R0 column 0, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the Android layout gravity equals to fill horizontal for both of them. That is your R0 column 0 and R1 column 0. And now if you guys take a look, there you go, R0 column 0 and this the second one, both are stretched now just the way we wanted, but we have applied the effect to both the places so that one of them can be seen, right? And this is how things work. They work in a group basically if you use a layout gravity. Next, let's discuss about the orientation. There are two ways you can arrange stuff. You can arrange stuff horizontally, which is the default, as you guys can see over here. There is R0 C0, R0 C1, C2 and R1 C0, R1 C1, right? Now take a look over here. You can also arrange stuff vertically, and that does nothing great. It simply places things vertically. It just puts R0 column 0 1, then it puts the column 1 below it. Column 2 should go below it, but remember we have only 2 rows and 3 columns, and that is why when it comes to R0 column 2 is not placed below this, but instead it's placed in the separate column right after this. It's like going from left to right and one below each other, right? Now you can also control whether a particular view goes inside which row and which column. Remember, by default everything is placed one after the other or one below the other, depending on whether your orientation is horizontal or vertical, right? But you can also control stuff as to which view will go exactly inside which row and which column. For example, let's see I have this R0 column 0 but the default structure over here. Now let's say I have this R0 column 1. I want this in the first row, not in the 0th row, and I also wanted the 0th column right below this. Can I do that? Well, very simple, I can do that. I have to go there and simply add this property for this by saying layout row equals to 1 and layout column equals to 0, and that means place that column R0 column 1 right in the first row and 0th column, and as you guys can see the remaining stuff simply follows it, right? It's like that. When you specify a column number and row number for a particular view, the others simply follow it. If you guys are from an HTML background, you guys have probably heard about colspan and rowspan, which is used in tables inside HTML. But if you're not from an HTML background, don't worry too much about it. Spanning multiple rows and columns is a way to make sure that a particular view takes more than one column or more than one row. Now why would you do that? Well, to give probably a good appearance for your app. That's mostly why you do stuff like that. Alright, so here you can use your Android layout column span to make a view span multiple columns. In the other words, it will take more than one column for its width. And then you can use the layout gravity equals to fill for using row span and column span. If you don't use this attribute, you don't see the effect of the column span and row span, to be honest with you. And then you have the layout row span to make it span multiple rows. So let's actually see with examples how to make a column, how to make a view take multiple columns, and how to make a view take multiple rows. So here, for the first part, I have column span. Now what I want to do here is I want to do this R0 column 1 to take 2 columns. In other words, this should stretch completely, and this R0 column 2 should appear below, and that's what I want to do first. So let me show you how to do that. Very simple. I use a layout column span equals to 2, and I use a layout gravity equals to fill on R0 column 1, which is right over here. And once I do that, as you guys can see, it takes double the width, right? Now let's talk about the row span. The row span is the last element you want to know about. Here, what I want to do is I want to make this R0 column 0 take 2 rows in terms of height. So how can I do that? Very simple. Go and add an Android layout equals row span equals to 2 and a layout gravity equals to fill. And I also noticed something. The row count is 2 and the column count is 2 for this one. As you guys can see, now this takes double the height, right? And the others simply follow suit, as you guys can notice in the diagram. So you guys can go ahead, use the row span and column span and play around and let me know what you think about this. If you like what you saw, please subscribe to my channel, comment, let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear from you guys. Also check us out on the Facebook page where we talk about the hottest trends about Android. And I'll catch you guys in the next vid. Have a nice day.